So one more thing I want to do here, just to kind of help us all kind of understand these differences here. Here we go. Draw a quick diagram, 4-quadrant style diagram here. Let's say this is quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and this column is economic freedom, and this one is economic control, and this one is social freedom, and this is social control. Okay, so what do I mean by these? Economic freedom would be more towards the capitalist or free market end of the spectrum, right? Economic control would be more towards interventionism or socialism, or does that make sense, guys? Social freedom is like personal life freedom. You can't tell me how to live my personal life. So these social side would, in terms of politics, often deal with, gay marriage, abortion, and lots of other issues that deal with people's personal lives, not their economic lives. Okay? So if you were looking at this, where do conservatives fall? In quadrant 1, 2, 3, or 4? Exactly. Yeah, so conservatives would be right here, right? Let's put con. Okay? Social controls, right? Economic freedom. Okay? Where would liberals or progressives fall? Yeah, exactly. Where would a socialist, and not like socialists like, oh, people accuse Barack Obama of being a socialist, which he's not, right? But where would like true socialists be on this? Yeah, 4, exactly. And then where would your kind of libertarian, anarchistic, anarchism is like the extreme version of this. Libertarian is way less extreme, but yeah, so libertarian. Does that help you kind of understand the differences between these different groupings? I used to work for the Republican Party back when I was 17 and 18, and then I worked for them for a little while again when I think it was 21, 22 years old. Anyway, and I worked for them during the 2000 and the 2004 elections. And during the 2000 elections, what I did is I helped them with, we were setting up debates on college campuses. And what we would do is we would have the leader of the college Republicans on campus and the leader of the college Democrats on campus, along with a conservative and a liberal professor on a panel, and have them debate. So the audience would basically just show up and listen to a debate and, pose questions, answer questions, and so forth, and kind of advocate for their candidate, which in the 2000 election was George Bush versus Al Gore. So they would kind of do their, conservative versus liberal debates. And what I found was fascinating and this was in the state of Utah, which is a fairly conservative, fairly religious state. In fact, some argue one of the most conservative, most religious states, okay? What I found was every time the panel would make a social freedom argument, the students would really cheer hard. Not everyone, but most students really would, really cheer hard. Stay out of my personal lives. Don't tell me how I can live my life. Don't tell me about my reproductive freedoms or lack thereof. Like stay out of people's lives. When they would make those general arguments, students would cheer. When they would make, don't tell me how to, spend my money or where my money should go, stop taxing us so much, stay out of my wallet, type general arguments. And when they got into the nitty-gritty details, there wasn't a whole lot of enthusiasm either way, because that's kind of more in-depth. But when they just kind of made the big, bombastic, sort of big picture, if you will, arguments, the students would cheer. And what I found was most young people tend to be more libertarian. And I found that fascinating, that you see a lot of young people leaning toward the libertarian end of the spectrum. Now, there's differences, don't get me wrong, and there's exceptions to that, plenty, right? And because we don't have a strong libertarian party in the United States, it really depends on the student. Do they lean more towards favoring economic freedom? Then they tend to go more with the Republicans. And if they lean more towards social freedom, then they tend to go along with progressives. But in reality, they tend to kind of advocate most of all for social freedom and economic freedom, which I found kind of fascinating. All right, so So we've got these 4 different types of systems, and then universal enlightened production really doesn't fall anywhere on this scale, right? Some, might agree with one of these or more or whatnot, but they're really saying, disregard all of that. What's more important is for you to go develop a business that has actually helps mankind, develop products that help mankind. So it is about, making money, but it's not just about making money. It's also about products that really benefit people's lives, don't hinder the environment or don't hinder the world or have impact in a great way. Williamsburg, for example, is a good example of that. Williamsburg mission is not simply to make money. Do we make money? Yeah, we've got to make money, right, to survive. But that's not the point. The point is to impact American education, to impact your lives, right, to build a generation of students who can lead. And so our business is really more about that, even though the business makes money. That's more universal enlightened production. Okay, Aaron, go ahead.
Well, if we had to place them on the spectrum, wouldn't they be somewhere like in the middle, but toward the upper left middle? Because they need to have some government in order to maintain the environment they can operate in and do good in, but they also they can't have too much control, or they can't make the choices they need to help the world. So somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Yeah, I find definitely kind of people from that camp in all 3 of these. You really don't find them here, for sure, too often, but you definitely find them. I mean, sometimes you probably do, but you can find them more here, sometimes here, and sometimes here. But that's situational, so there's no real consistency there. Okay, let's go to our last one real quick. How do these worldviews look at history? So we've talked a decent amount in this class about historical evolution, right? We spent a class on that and went through kind of the ideas behind evolution and so forth. So you're pretty familiar with what that looks like. That kind of falls more into the secular humanist camp, okay? Then you have the Christian fundamentalists. We've also spent quite a bit of time on those ideas and on creation myths and so forth in this class. Christian fundamentalists tend to believe in the 6,000-year-old Earth. Now, is there exceptions to that? Yes. So please don't think that every Christian or every Christian fundamentalist necessarily is this way, right? There's always exceptions. People are way more complicated than just one worldview, right? But they tend to fall more within this camp, okay? That 6,000-year or Earth fall redemption, type thinking. This is described as historicism, which is often associated with objectivism as well, but also, more generally speaking, is just kind of about context and place. But let me be more specific there. Because in order to accurately understand history, you have to have great context of place and time. It's very difficult to actually get a good reading, according to a postmodernist, of history, any accurate understanding of history, because history tends to be written by the winners, and history tends to be written by people with a certain perspective. So it all becomes subjective, and therefore all becomes not something that you can truly define. Does that make sense? Okay. And then this last one is going to sound super poofy la la. It's going to be kind of out there, and you might be like, what? What does that mean? Don't overthink it, okay? It's described as evolutionary godhood. But what that means is that man has risen above the animals, if you will, evolutionarily speaking, is self-aware, and therefore has stewardship or has, what's the word I'm looking for, has responsibility for the planet to take care of it. So man is positioned because of kind of evolved into this great self-aware being, is therefore godlike. Not godlike in some supernatural power sense, but over all things, dominion over all things. I'm kind of using Christian terms, dominion and stewardship and so forth, but I think you get what I'm saying though, right? Cool. Okay. Now let's come full circle. Now that you can see kind of the differences between each of these perspectives, and we're getting into 20th century history now and getting into, the modern age. So it's important for us to understand this. On a different level, it's important for you to understand this because as you go out into the world, so often what we do is we tend to think of all of this as sort of us against them, is the tendency that most people have. So Christian fundamentalists don't really often perceive a big difference between postmodernists, cosmic humanists, and secular humanists, even though there are real differences. They tend to, it's us Christians and everyone else. And that's not the case with just Christians, right? Secular humanists see Christians and cosmic humanists as kind of foofy-la-la believers, you know what I mean? They believe in different things, sure, but yeah, they're not looking at the, you know, cold, hard facts of science in the world. Postmodernism says, hey, all these people believe that they can discover truth, and truth is non-discoverable, you know what I mean? And so all of these perspectives tend to kind of see things as us and everyone else. And therefore, we kind of have a world so often that is just divided simply one-to-one, us and them. And it creates a lot of zero-sum games. It's either our way or the highway. It's either our way or everything's bad. And the truth is the world is much more complex than this. Every issue has many sides and many perspectives. And recognizing that empowers you to A, understand others and seek understanding. B, also understand that it's not just you and your worldview versus everyone else. So you don't have to isolate yourself. And you can bridge gaps for people. You can say, you know, we agree here, we agree in these ways, but maybe not in those ways. And you can kind of bridge the gap and create commonalities by looking at the nuances of these worldviews as opposed to just kind of chalking it up to us versus them. Any questions? I think we got a few of you writing in the chat here. Is this enlightening? Is this helpful, guys? Cool. Is it confusing at all to anyone? Are you kind of like, I don't, you know, feel free to ask questions. Aaron, go ahead.
What I think is cool is how we see a lot of these, like, almost not the classifications in the media and how the media talks about groups of people. Well, when you talk to each individual person, most of the time they're not going to fit in the box. They might fit in most of a category, but you're going to be able to find, oh, look, this person's a Christian fundamentalist, but actually it's kind of postmodern about their philosophy. Like, that's one of my friends is like that. It's kind of fun to be able to see where people cross over, and it helps you understand them better, I think.
Yeah, it really does.